My name's Tzeporah Berman, and I'm a Climate Breakthrough Awardee, and I'm here with my friend Kathrin Gutmann, who's also a Climate Breakthrough Awardee.
Hello, Tzeporah. It's wonderful to now have this chance to talk more with you.
I know. I have a question for you, as a matter of fact. What's the most exciting thing in climate action you've seen in the last few years?
I think that, because I'm someone that works also in phasing out fossil fuels, so I think that in many places in the world we have made some really significant wins against the fossil fuel industry. The wins and the coal industry is on the way out in many places in the world, and that has a lot to do with what the climate community, also climate activists, have resulted in. Like that's the outcome of their work, years and years of relentless work around that. And I know the coal side a lot. You've been working on fossil fuels for a long time as well, so you have your share of stories to tell around that there. But it's really accumulated in the last few years there. And one thing that also gave me great comfort from a perspective in Europe was that we had the energy crisis because Russia attacked Ukraine, changed the whole energy landscape. And we were really worried that a lot of governments would roll back all the advances on phasing out coal. And that did not happen. There was a lot of resilience. It was clear coal is on the way out, and it's still on the way out in Europe.
You know, it did seem to me at the time that it was entirely in some ways I was inspired by how fast the fossil fuel industry moved to try and take advantage of that moment. I mean, the bombs had barely dropped in Ukraine before the fossil fuel industry was out there talking about why this is why we need to expand production of fossil fuels and LNG I do think that was a great sign of hope that didn't stick, that European governments held on to their climate ambition, and certainly we didn't see the expansion that the fossil fuel industry wanted. I mean, probably because of.
Well, it was two things happening in parallel. So in coal, we did not see a rollback. It was clear it's structurally in decline, it's disappearing. When it comes to gas, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So there you had Europe go on a shopping spree across the world, and really also, I think we lost some momentum that had been built up in some other countries because the Europeans just started becoming this demand driver, and we're still, facing that situation. So I think several things happened, but at the same time we did see a renewables boom. And the other thing that I found really encouraging in talking about our community is when the war started, how fast we all connected globally and understood the role of the fossil industry in all of this, and also as a driving force. And we started organizing, and that's also where I took a lot of courage from, that we're capable of doing that, and also shared interpretation of what's going on, and then some really fast organizing across a whole set of communities in many, many continents. So that also gave me courage.
Yeah.
So should I join a climate rally, or do they make a difference? Good question there, because we've had many years of climate rallies, and then also with the pandemic, this big impact there. And then now I think we're also wondering a little bit what's the role around also the street protests.
I think that there is no question that people marching in the streets has an impact. It has an impact on whether or not our decision makers are going to put in place new legislation, whether or not they're going to prioritize action on climate change. It's often hard to point to one thing that we do or one rally that we go to and say, this is the impact. But there isn't a social movement throughout history in which rallies and protests and public engagement on an issue hasn't been essential to getting decision makers to act.
Yeah, and I look at like a situation where, because we're in a phase where there's also thinking going into what kind of street action does the time now also need. And I wonder if there's the one element, because there's also a doubt how much support for climate action there is in light of cost of living crisis. So to some extent, having rallies also shows there are many of us that want this still, and we need to build that visibility because we all see all these doubts that are being seeded everywhere, and just saying, no, not anymore. People are just not concerned with that. They're foremost concerned with cost of living crisis. So we know these things feed each other, right?
Well, and if you look at the polling, the majority of people in every country in the world believe that climate change is happening and want stronger action on climate change. But in many countries, they also think they're alone, that they're the minority. And so I think you're right. Like, actually seeing people in the streets willing to take action, willing to even do civil disobedience, I think helps people understand how serious the problem is. And sometimes it can seem like such a huge disconnect. You know, you hear about fires and floods and you hear how bad the climate crisis is, but then everyone seems to be going about life as normal. And it's not normal, and it shouldn't be normal. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's critical. I think it's critical that more and more people engage, and it's COVID set us back, because there was such momentum around the Fridays for the Future marches and the climate marches, and then everyone all of a sudden was at home, and I feel like we're just getting back to it now.
Yeah, but with this changed context, in Europe with the cost of living crisis, so I wonder of what to direct the street protests at, and maybe we need to start doing this also a lot closer to home and closer to people's lives, so that they can make the connection between climate change and the change that we should be fighting for, and find, build up the presence in many places as opposed to the one big rally, right? I think there's some reflection that I'm at least doing what role that plays, also given the current context and that things have changed.
What I love is persistence of it. Like right now, there's groups in the U.S. that are protesting at Citibank, which is one of the largest fossil fuel financiers in the world, and they're there every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, that kind of persistence, it takes a while to build a story for people to wrap their head around what's happening.
Yeah.
It's not going to be one rally. It's not going to be one march. It's actually the accumulation of activities. I mean, I think organizing is it's the grunt work of social change. It takes multiple activities over periods of time to really raise an issue and to make that change. There's no easy answer.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, I have another question for you. Reducing demand for fossil fuels or stopping the supply of fossil fuels?
The answer is, of course, we need both, because it's a fossil fuel system, an economic system, where the one reinforces the other.
Yeah.
So beyond fossil fuels, we're more, I call it a demand destruction campaign. So we're changing the power system, helping with electrification to take away the demand for fossil fuels. But we know that quite a few of the companies that we work with work on both sides of the coin of supplying fossil fuels, or also midstream. So that's one, so it becomes quite important for what we do, is that we work with the organizations that work on the supply side, and we do way too little of it.
Yeah.
Also way too little analysis of how it hangs together, so that we can then, work, on the right pressure points to help start unraveling this, because it's locked in place there, and that's really hard for us to break through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we agree. Well, you work more on demand and I work more on production or supply. The fact is it has to be both, right? Economists would say it's like trying to cut with one half of the scissors. You have to cut demand and supply. And for too long, we've really only talked about cutting emissions and cutting demand, instead of talking about what exactly are we building. What we build today will be what we use tomorrow. And so we can't keep building more and more fossil fuel production and more projects and expect that somehow we're going to reduce emissions. It's not working. So we actually need to cut both. And then we need to think really carefully about what we're building to create a cleaner and safer world.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that we're investing a lot of time as beyond the Beyond Fossil Fuels campaign is, on the one hand, the fossil exit campaigning, but really combining it with what we call the renewables-based solutions, right? So, because it's not just wind and solar and grids, it's actually a whole other system, technologically speaking, but also in the way it's meant to be integrated into society. And I think that's a thing that we as a community also still learning with each other on how do we do joined up work around this and not often silos,
Yeah.
because that doesn't work anymore. When we go to all those and say, don't build that, it's like, yeah, but what instead, right? And it's this thing, there's a learning curve for us as a community around that question.
And what we're finding with the campaign for the fossil fuel treaty is that every government who is producing right now knows that we need to produce less, but they all want to be the last barrel sold. And so we have to find ways to foster cooperation between governments, to get them working together to manage who gets to produce and how much in an equitable way. And that's never been done before. Mm-hmm. But now at least we have governments that are willing to try it.
Yeah. And we're because the focus for the power sector work is gas, and we're seeing a similar thing that the way the transition will work is there's this, no one's planning the gas exit, so instead it's someone else's plant that will shut down and mine will continue for a long time, and it's someone else's plant that won't get built, but I can still build it, mine's still needed. So that's what's going on right now, and that we have to break through. And it has also something to do with the lack of confidence in the renewables-based system and the alternative for it. Also because it's a very simplified understanding, and it's much easier to stay with the system we have, where then also all what we call the dangerous distraction, the false solutions come in. We'll just do hydrogen, or we'll then do carbon capture and storage, and then we can just sort of continue with what we have. And I think that's also what we're confronted with the fossil industry, that they're doing this out of a position of power, where then those of us working on the solution side, we need to start painting that picture of what what will replace it, and is replacing it now already, to create a lot more doubts in the system, the fossil system that we have.
Yeah, I think the fact is that the fossil fuel system only supports very few people. This is the most profitable industry on Earth, and the profits are very consolidated in a couple of big companies. And a renewable energy system by its nature is distributed power in every sense of the word, and distributed profits. And that's what they don't like. I think right now that we're living the last gasp of the fossil fuel industry. And that's why they're pushing so hard for new infrastructure and new projects, because they can see the writing on the wall. Renewable energy is cheaper now. And they know that they're going to have to constrain their production. And they don't want to.
Yeah, and then you see how they're then trying to go for, we can do biomethane instead, or with CCS, and they just like these prolongation strategies, where they can then also use the money they have and sort of like continue with their approach. You can see all of that. Yeah. So a very different question I have for you now. What's something you love about your work that you wish more people would know about?
I guess I love the people I'm getting to meet around the world who are working on the fossil fuel treaty I was recently in the South Pacific and meeting with indigenous leaders there who are creating strategies to bring culture and music to the campaign to inspire more people to join, meeting with Amazon indigenous leaders and who are just so courageous and so fierce, and have such incredible persistence over time, and then folks in many countries in Africa who have so many more challenges than, in a lot of ways, in their daily lives than I do, coming from Canada, and yet they're so full of joy. And they're working so hard, and they can envision the system that they're trying to create. It's I think what I love is that that you get to work with all these incredible people, and that the work itself gives you a sense of joy and a shared purpose. And this work is hard. These issues are overwhelming, but I feel so grateful that I get to get up every day and meet with these incredible people and work with people that I know share my values, who in various ways are working to protect life, to stop the development of more fossil fuel systems that they know are poisoning us, and who are doing it in such inspiring ways. If you weren't doing environmental work, what do you think you would be doing instead? Any childhood dreams?
It's a hard one. I had a lot of different things I wanted to do as a teenager, going from becoming an artist to becoming an archaeologist. I did it all, but I'm actually pretty sure that what I'm doing now is what I want to be doing. Like it's, I thought, you have your moments where you just think what it would be else, but no, it really is, it's me, what I'm doing right now. And it's, because not just environmental work, it's like you just described, it's a lot of work with people. You're asking the big societal questions that we're a part of.
Yeah.
And so when, climate impacts happen, I'm so glad I work on this because I'm doing something about it, right?
Yeah.
So, no, this is what I want to be doing. Yeah, nothing else. Yeah, okay. And what makes being part of the Climate Breakthrough Awardee community special?
The group of people that are a part of the Climate Breakthrough community have big ambition, big ideas, and also a lot of heart and creativity. And to be able to connect with other people who are, in some ways entrepreneurs, though we don't often use that term in the nonprofit community, but innovators, people who are willing to take chances, who are, and share my sense of urgency on the climate crisis, but often approaching it in a very different way than I did. I feel like I learn all the time, and I'm inspired by this community. I feel very lucky to be a part of it.
And what I also see is people with big thoughts, ideas, ambition, but it's not about them. It's really about the networks and the communities they're part of, and working with them and growing them, plus the positivity. Because like in times of climate disaster, by going in there and it's like, let's find a way through this, let's work together. And this positivity and finding solutions and everything, that's also shining through a lot. And then the other thing that just like the sheer fact of the Climate Breakthrough Award and all the support that comes with it is, it's like helping to make me think big and daring to think big. And that's
Totally.
I'm allowed to do that. Yeah, and I'm allowed to have stretch goals and not have all the answers yet, and that's just, it needs figuring out. That's pretty precious. Plus, also the courage, just get the help you need because this is really big. And it's like, and so, like the strategies I'm developing now with my team and the large community I'm part of is never been this professional, so thought through, and everything. So our strategy is maturing so much faster than anything before, and it has something to do with the setup also, and the support that comes around it. It's a very, unusual to have that, and we need more of it, I would say.
Absolutely. When I first got the award, I was super excited, and then I went through this period of being absolutely terrified, or just kind of almost crushed with the responsibility of it. Really? Several $1 million and I can do whatever I think is necessary? Because so often you're squishing your ideas into someone else's framework, or you have half the budget you thought you would need. And then I felt like George Clooney in Ocean's 11. I kept saying, "This is it. I'm building my Climate 11." How do we build a global fossil fuel treaty? I don't know. I need the best lawyer and the best diplomat and the best communications expert, and you could do it. And everyone I approached said yes. And then pulling that team together, like, when do you get that kind of opportunity? It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's the kind of people that are joining that are also so special. And they're just have the same mindset there, and then so not doing this alone at all, but with this idea of also like, let's do this, let's think big, let's start also new things, but against the strategy. And so it's a very special set of people that I have around me now, thanks to all of this. And then the freedom of thought and creativity that this brings, and what I see, what this triggers and people I work with. That's a joy. I think we're getting the best out of people as a result.